Hi everyone! So today I'm going to attempt to give you a short tutorial in how to animate in Animate CC, or Flash as it was formerly called. So first thing you gotta do, open up Animate CC. I've rearranged my panels a little bit just because this is the workspace that I prefer. So I've got my timeline at the top there, and then at the side, so you will need your Properties tab, Library, Tools, and your Color tab. If you are missing any of these, you can go up to the top bar on your computer and click Window, and it should come up with all of these different options that you then can click on and drag into your workspace to use as and when you want. So a quick tour around the basic workspace. At the top you have your timeline, and it has all these buttons. Obviously that's play button, forward, back, frame by frame, whatever, all of those. To the left of the play button section is the keyframe tool. You can click on this to make a new keyframe, or you click the arrows on either side to jump to the keyframe before or the keyframe after. To the left of this you have your frame rate, which I am going to set to 12 frames per second for this tutorial. Most of the time you should animate on 24, even if you double up in frames, but this is just quicker and easier for me right now. Okay, if we go back to the play button, and to the right you have a little looping symbol. I'm just going to point out the buttons that I'm going to use for this tutorial, but you have the little looping symbol, and if you click on that you can dictate where you want your animation to loop when you want to play it back. A quick note, to play back an animation in Animate CC, it is enter instead of space. To the right of the looping button you have a group of 4 little icons. The first one is really the only important one for today, and that is the onion skin setting. So once you click that, you can again dictate how many frames back or how many frames forward you want to see while you're on a specific frame. Another note, especially for working on a MacBook, you'll need to set up your F keys functionality by going to settings and keyboard, and then you check the little box that says the thing about the F keys. This is because the way that you make a new blank keyframe in Animate CC is F7. If you then draw on that frame and want to make another keyframe with the same drawing, you press F6. So as you can see, I made a keyframe, I drew on it, I made another keyframe, it's the same drawing, but I can then add to it without altering the frame before it. And as I said, it's F7 to make a new blank keyframe, and then you can draw on that and it becomes a not blank keyframe because it's no longer blank. And as I said, you can use the onion skins to see forward or back. You can also click and drag the keyframes along the timeline if you need to. A quick note, if these keys aren't working for you when you first open up Animate CC, it's probably because you haven't inserted any frames. So you do that by highlighting the amount of frames in the timeline that you would like to add, and then you right click and click insert frames, I think it is, or something similar. And then you'll basically just get one long blank keyframe, and from there you can use your F key shortcuts. So for this tutorial I'm going to do a tiger run cycle. I've already sketched some of the keyframes of a tiger's run cycle in my sketchbook, so I'm just going to copy these into my file. I don't know if you watched my Photoshop tutorial, but I said in there that I like to copy and paste the first keyframe at the end of the animation so that I can use onion skins to make sure that the animation is looping correctly and it looks alright. Another thing I like to do in Animate CC, specifically because it has a tweening option where it tweens objects automatically, I like to make circles for all of the joints in my characters, which I then tween and I can use as a guide for when I'm doing cleanup animation. So I've done a sketch of my character that is more proportional to what I actually want to make it look like, and now I'm going to add all of the joints. There's quite a lot of joints in this character. You don't have to do this, so don't worry if it gets confusing. But basically I've divided it into the body, the back legs, and the front legs. The body is blue, back legs are green, front legs pink. And this is just basically a reference sheet for me to remember. So what I've done now is made a graphic symbol. You do this by going into your library link and right-clicking in this box and then click New Symbol. You need to make sure that your symbol is set to a graphic symbol, and inside this symbol I've just made a blue circle basically, which I'm now going to add into my composition. The circles on the joints of all of the frames that I know, which again is every second frame. So instead of going back and adding the in-betweens by hand, what you can do is highlight everything that you want to tween, and then right click and click Create Classic Tween, which will make your layer go purple like this. So I've finished that. I've finished all of the guides on my tiger. So what I'm going to do now is copy and paste all of these frames. You see I've got so many because of all the guides that I set up. I'm going to copy and paste all of those frames into a new symbol, and then basically all of the messy frames are out of the way. You make a new layer in your main composition, and you click and drag the symbol that you've now pasted all your frames into the composition. The cool thing about this is that you can set keyframes for symbols. So if I make a start and end pose for my tiger, if I wanted to, I right click and create classic tween, and then it automatically tweens it so that my tiger looks like it's running across the screen. I'm not going to use that for the final animation, but I thought it was just a cool thing to show. So now I've got all my guides and my roughs set up, and I've got a nice clean composition. So now what I'm going to do is start the cleanup process. So on a new layer, I'm going to use the pen tool to outline a portion of the body that I want to animate first. So basically what I'm going to do is use one shape to make the body of the tiger as well as the legs furthest away from the camera. So that would be the left legs of the tiger. This is just so I have less shapes to animate or less layers to animate in future by just combining all of these into one shape. It's just easier for me. For the pen tool, you just point and click where you want any anchor points to go. If you've used Illustrator before, it's very similar to that, obviously because it's made by Adobe and it uses vectors. So I know that vectors can be a hard thing to get your head around, but it is worth learning because once you're there, it makes the process a lot quicker in this program. And it's not too hard to learn. Like a couple days at it, a couple days practice, and you'll be there. So now what I want to do is go into my tools bar and select the little pointy arrow underneath the black arrow, which allows me to alter the anchor points and to make them more curvy. If I then want to go back in and alter anything with the handles that it provides me with, you can click the white arrow, which is next to the black arrow in the tools bar, and I can just change the anchor points and outline this tiger. So the next thing I want to do is add some colour to him. As I forgot to get my colour bar up before, I'm now going to put it up, and there it is. It's in my sidebar. So I want to add some gradients to my design. So I'm going to click the drop down menu and select linear gradient, which brings you up with this menu. If you double click on the little squares on the line, you can change the colours. So I want a dark purple pinkish colour as shading for my tiger, and then a bright orange for the rest of him. So I'm going to select these colours in the colour wheels that it provides me with. You can alter colours at any point. You can click anywhere on that line to add more colours to your gradient, and then to get rid of them, you just click and drag them off of the line. To alter the gradients that you now have, you go to the gradient tool. If you can't see it initially, it's because you have the transform tool up. If you click and hold whatever icon is next to the white arrow, it'll come up with a little drop down menu and you can select the gradient tool from there. With the gradient tool, you can change the direction of the gradient, the orientation of the gradient, and the size of the gradient, so how fast it changes from one colour to the next. So now I've got my shape on my very first keyframe in my panel, and now I'm just going to make a new keyframe every time I move on to the next frame, and then alter the shape to fit the next keyframe. So that way I've only drawn one shape, I'm just resizing it or altering its shape on every frame, so I don't have to add gradients every time, so it's just a bit of a shortcut. As the roughs were only on every second frame, I will have to go back and add some tweening myself. As the shape is not a symbol, Animate CC will not know how to tween it, so you'll have to do that yourself. But yeah, it's not too bad. It's only every second frame, and you can use onion skins to help you see where you are and help you get in between the frames correctly. If the colours get in the way, you can always click on that little coloured bar next to your layers in the timeline panel. As you can see, I have an orange, pink, green and purple. They're tiny little squares right at the top there. If you click on that colour, it will get rid of any colour that you've added to the layer, and it will just show a vector outline of the shape. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to make a new layer, and on this layer I'm going to put the right legs of my tiger, which are the closest to the viewer. I know I used my pen tool last time to make the outline of the body, but you can also use the line tool to make lines. You have to remember though, after you make your lines, you have to select everything using the black arrow. You then go into the properties tab and you select the little symbol with the, it looks like 3 little boxes inside a big square. You click that and it combines all of your individual lines into one shape. So after you've combined all your lines into one shape, you can then alter the anchor points using the white arrow, just like you did when you made the body, or just like I did when I made the body. So now we have the outline of a back leg. You can then add the same gradient to this using the color tab. If you want to make sure that the line disappears, you go on to the box next to the pencil and just select the white box with the red line going through it, and that'll make it invisible. As you can see, underneath is a paint bucket, and that's where you add your gradient. So yeah, and then you just go through all of your frames again, making sure that these frames match up to the roughs that you've done. You might have to alter the gradient a few times on these just because they change shape so much, but it's not too big a job. You can also find out the shortcuts for all of these tools if you hover your mouse over the tool that you want to select. So once you get to grips with shortcuts, this whole process goes a lot quicker. So next thing I'm going to do is make the head of my tiger. I'm going to do this in a new symbol, so that way I don't have to redraw or reshape the head on every single frame. I can just move it and rotate it around the screen, and it'll make it a lot quicker. So I've made a new symbol with the head in, where I've just dragged the head symbol into my timeline, or into my workspace even. So now I'm just going to move the head and rotate it and make sure that the lines of the body match up to the head so you can't see a join. I'm going to do this for all of the frames, and since I've already done the in-betweens of the body, it should be pretty simple. So the last thing I wanted to show you was how to use masks. What I've done here is, again, copy and paste all of my cleanup animation into a new symbol. I've then dragged that symbol back into my main composition just to clean up my timeline a little bit. So now I have a new layer with the run symbol in it, and now I'm going to make a new layer again where I'm going to draw the stripes onto my tiger. What I'm going to do then is duplicate the layer with the animated symbol in, and I'm going to have one on top and one below the stripes. For the layer on top of the stripes, I'm simply going to right click and select mask, which masks the stripes to the shape above it. It also, the reason that we had to duplicate the layer is because anything that is used as a mask then disappears as it's fulfilled its purpose as a mask. So we have a layer on top that keeps the lines within the tiger. We have the stripes on the next layer, and then below that we have a layer with the animated symbol within it. So now I'm just going to use the transform tool, which is in the tools panel next to the white arrow, to resize and move around the stripes so that you can't see the edges of the stripes as the tiger runs. So there we go, from my initial sketches to my rough, very rough animation to my finished piece. So the finished piece, I just added some gradients to the background, and there we go. We've made a finished looping animation. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope it was understandable. I know that I went pretty fast. But yeah, I hope to do some more of these again, specifically with TV Paint. I'd quite like to give a small tutorial on that next. So yeah, if there's any other programs you can think of that you'd like me to do a very beginner's guide on how to use, then let me know. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you stick around for the next one.